Well, good afternoon. Welcome to How to Rock the Virtual Stage. I'm the host, the Trigger, Rich Bontrager. Welcome to a special edition of How to Rock the Virtual Stage. Normally, we are in the evening hours, but today, and in fact, the next 2 days, we're going to be live in primetime midday for you. Coming up today, we're going to talk a lot about sponsorship and special parts of how to increase revenue for your virtual stage events. So stick around for all the details of that. But we are going to be back tomorrow on Thursday afternoon on the 3rd of December. Allison Graham is going to be my guest. Allison is a speaker, author, but the cool thing about Allison is she's inspiring people with hope of resilience. 2020 has been a mess. We're all trying to figure out how to bounce back. I cannot figure out a better topic to finish the end of the year with. Allison's going to be on with a full hour. You get to hear from her, engage with her. So that's 1 o'clock Eastern time, Thursday the 3rd. Get your tickets from Eventbrite and join us there. The following week on Wednesday night, we're back in prime time, 8 o'clock Eastern time. We go live, and Eli Marcus is going to be with us. Eli is a connector to the connector of the stars. He's an incredible man. He has a Rolodex. He's going to open up some tips and tricks on how to reach into high-level people that you could never imagine touching. So don't miss that next week. Again, Eventbrite, follow us, like us, and get on board with what we're doing. How to rock the virtual stage. The whole idea here is I want to give you tips and tricks to help you better improve your stage presence, your promotions, your sales, your marketing. The virtual stage is not disappearing. It's not going anywhere. In fact, it's going to be around a lot longer. And no matter what, there will always be a hybrid. So I want to help you with your podcast, your webinars, your coaching seminars, whatever you're doing, to help you rock your show. And I bring great guests on. And today we're going to bring on a wonderful guest. Steven Rowell is going to be with us today. He is here to help increase your speaking and consulting income. He has about 37 different ways to impact and help you raise your income and your revenue. Steven has worked with Disney, and he has 9 resort hotels with Marriott, Walt Disney World, including Disney's great Floridian beach resort and the All-Star Sports and Music Resorts. He helped launch and get those going. Also, he's a consultant with over 25 Fortune 500 companies. He's a consultant, a speaker, an author. He knows how to get sponsorships rolling. Welcome to the stage today. Here's Steven Rowell. Good afternoon, Steven.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Great to have you with us. So you have worked with the mouse. You
Yes.
have worked for the mouse. And one of the things that I love about the philosophy of the mouse is, and I'm curious, how did this impact you? It's always been said, you can do anything, dream anything, try anything at Disney. They love people trying. But the only thing that matters, it's all about the mouse. What's that philosophy like to learn how to work under that? Is it pressure? Is it exciting? Is it fun? Is it creative? What is that whole thing?
It's exhilarating. And some people called me an overachiever because I ended up dating Mickey Mouse for about 4 years during my career there. And bless her heart, she got injured as Mickey Mouse, actually. So she's no longer Mickey. But yes, it's absolutely exhilarating. There is a pressure for performance, but you feel safe and you feel supported. So that's part of why the culture is as positive as it is. So it's great.
And when we talk about the virtual world, part of the reason I'm doing, Stephen, is because I remember the wonderful world of Disney. Sunday nights, Walt would come out and he would get up behind his desk and he'd have a prop, he would have a poster. He would do virtual presentations before we even knew what virtual presentations is. Do they talk about that at Disney? Do they talk about how he captivated vision through the camera lens like nobody ever has?
Absolutely. In fact, I had the honor of being a traditions assistant, teaching new hire orientation for the first 3 days of new cast members. And it's all about storytelling. The way that you create a movement or you land a great sponsor or you build a great company culture is, and this is from Walt directly, is great storytelling. And they actually had skills training for managers on how to do that. And that's part of how we maintained the culture for so long.
And it's an amazing place. I could spend a whole hour just on Disney alone. So let's talk a little bit. I understand you're very passionate about something that has happened since the start of shutdown, the birth or the growth of the virtual stage. What is that's got you so excited about the virtual stage?
I just want to share with everybody, I'm a massive champion of this, and I'm a contrarian perhaps. I hope anyone who is doing, whether it's corporate or association, virtual presentations, and you're being paid, you're receiving a fee for doing so, I truly hope that you are not discounting your fees. My message to the world is this. You should not be paid for the mechanism or the distribution channel of your message. You're getting paid for your life's work, your expertise, but more importantly, the result and the transformation that you provide your clients. So I would say, and this is I'm a big champion of, don't fall into the trap of somebody saying, oh, well, it's virtual, so I need you to discount your fees. Stand in your truth and in your power and focus on, I'm going to deliver the same transformation, the same results for your audience.
Now, is that for any part? Because there's webinars, there's podcasts, there's all these different industries. Is that true for any of these industries or just for the onstage presenter?
Well, I think it's true across the board in terms of standing in your truth, standing in your power. And if you're going to charge a fee, then definitely do that. I don't believe that we need to, succumb to this culture of, oh, it's got to be discounted. You just really need to stand in your power. I also compassionately understand that there's a lot of mindset stuff going on there. And so some people they've got blocks with their mindset, and I totally have compassion for that too.
So we're going to talk about sponsorships today. That's one of the areas that I've been working on as this stage keeps growing. Sponsorships is not necessarily the same as just marketing, sales, and everything else. Sponsorships is a different beast. Talk about sponsorship a little bit from your approach. What is sponsorship?
Okay, so here's what I want to do. I'll take 1 second off camera, and I want to show you the power of what's possible.
All right. As he does that, don't forget that we always are here every week. We are trying to help you rock the virtual stage. And again, tomorrow, Allison Graham is going to be with us, so make sure you don't miss that tomorrow with Steven and tomorrow with Allison. Steven Rowell, I have no idea what he's doing. This is always fun. This is why we do this live.
All right. So you need to have your superpower, and you need to know what that superpower is. And that's what matters in sponsorship. You got to be clear about what your superpower is, or as I'm showing you Batman, what was the secret about Batman? He's the only superhero that doesn't have some special power. He's just a normal human. So what I wanted to share with you is, even if you're a normal human being, you can be Batman and access tools, strategies, be unique, and bring your superpower. You don't have to be able to levitate, fly, or anything like that. So be Batman, find your own way, or be Batwoman, right? And that is the key, is you've got to know your superpower as you're interacting with sponsors. Because in your superpower is where you'll have certainty and credibility, and then you can take your mask off and be yourself.
So how do you find that superpower? Because a lot of people, it's talents, it's gifts, it's passion, a lot of things that go into that. But how do you really find, this is what I'm really, really good at, Steven?
Sure. So one is, right off the bat, is I think we've got to stop taking ourselves too seriously. Honestly, I think we are so wound up tight. So first thing is, I just invite people to just stop taking yourself so seriously. The big one, though, that would be a quick answer is, if you could wake up every morning, get dressed, and walk into the next room, who would be in the room? What would be the pain or problem that they have? And what is the solution you want to bring for them, or to help them discover, or the transformation or result? And then the last part of that is, and how do you want to do that? So for instance, my gift, my superpower is facilitating mastermind groups. So I would be waking up, walking into the next room, and hosting mastermind groups, helping people turn what they think is impossible, turn that into possible. So one thing is to think about that. Who would you love to work with every day for the next 10 years? And then the other piece is, think about what it is that you've gotten feedback on. If you don't know, here's a tip. Survey 20 people and say, what do you think my superpower is?
So let's talk about the problem, because the first thing you said is find out what their problem. What is their touch point? How do you probe that and find that when you're trying to build this superpower out? Well, what's the best way to figure out the best niche or the best hurt that they need solved?
Well, what I do, and this is just what has worked for me for 25 years, is I always tell people, start with your own story. So I'll give you an example. I had a woman that was in a very high-end mastermind up in Canada that I was in. She was divorced, or been married 4 times, divorced twice, was a widow, and then was about to divorce her 4th. But in that had been a single mother for some time, and her daughters were red-haired twins. Never in her entire bio, her webpage, or any of the coaching, she was a coach, nowhere in it was she talking about any of that. In the mastermind, we said, well, why don't you work with divorcees and widows who have children who've been single moms, who have twins with red hair? True story. After she processed it about 2 minutes, she ends up in tears. So, Rich, one place I invite people to start is, what is your own story? Not just your successes, but your failures.
Yeah.
Because the vulnerability is what's going to draw people in. And just start there. Because the last thing on this, if you have to arm wrestle your client prospect or the event producer, if you have to arm wrestle them to convince them of the value, that's probably the hardest thing to do. And now you're selling rather than enrolling people. So start with your own true story. That's the first part.
So that's probably a good setup to how do you make your decision processing for sponsorship, because that's probably got to ducktail into who you're going to reach, how you're going to grab sponsors.
Mm-hmm.
So take us right into that. How do you make those decisions of who do you call, who do you pitch to?
Yep. So there's really three things I'd love to cover. One is proposals. How do you reach the people? And then also this idea of a movement or a vision. So the first part of answering your question is, how do you reach them? Well, there's a couple things I just want everybody to think about. One is, before you reach out to them, you're thinking too small. Your vision is too cramped. You don't have some big, huge, grandiose vision, and you ask for too little money. So before you even pick up the phone and call somebody, have a movement, multiple year movement. I want to work with Johnson & Johnson for the next 4 years to do X, Y, and Z. And in my mind, I need $1.5 million. In other words, don't do that. I need $50,000 for my one-day event or my one little virtual webinar. So that's the first part, is think bigger before you do it. In terms of reaching them, there's a lot of neat things. We can talk about it, but there's a lot of neat strategies. And if we have time, I'll cover a couple of them.
So that idea of reaching further than your initial blast is a huge thing. From my church ministry days and church planning, we went through the same concept of you're going to start here,
Mm-hmm.
but you're really going to go here. So why not ask for it here instead of delaying for the ask? And
Mm-hmm.
that's a big mental shift for a lot of people, because they're thinking in process and steps. They aren't thinking big and grand. What can you tell us about getting over that hurdle of thinking bigger than, going bigger than right away?
Sure. So the first caveat is, obviously I worked at Disney. So Disney shifted my whole paradigm. What happened working for Disney for about 7 years was I realized that anything is possible. And so when I left Disney, the big transition was working with corporations and individual leaders. The first thing they tell me is why they couldn't do something. And so I really had culture shock when I got back into the world of that, right? But the concept is what you want to think about. There's so many ways I could take this, but what I would say, tell you what specifically, tell me again the question.
So how do you change that frame of mind?
There you go.
From the small ask to the big.
There you go. So you just noticed that I have ADD and that I got so excited to tell you so many things I forgot, right? So how do you get over it? Here's the concept. Number one, the sponsors and anybody in that journey that you're on, I just want everybody to hear this. They buy in, they invest, they donate for two reasons. And I hope people will write this down. And this is coming from the people I've worked with, CEOs and sponsors. Here's the idea. They buy because of certainty, which is based in credibility and confidence in you. But they buy for certainty, because of the certainty. And then the second piece is they buy because of your passion, your vision, and the energy you're bringing. So if you can reframe it all as, and here's the gift, my role is to be excited and to speak with absolute certainty that this is my vision. That's how you do it. If you have mind blocks, then you need to get a coach to help you through that. But it's really about shifting your mindset.
So really what you're saying is they're buying you, not your project, your thing. That is a huge shift. A lot of people have to understand they're buying you first and foremost. And that's where you do have to get over yourself, your fears, your phobias, whatever.
Yep.
And that's where that confidence comes on in. It's not arrogance, it's confidence, right?
Exactly. There's a fine line there, but definitely confidence. Absolutely.
So what are some of the things people do wrong with sponsorships? Maybe let's go that direction what are the bombs before we get into the yays of sponsorship?
Sure. So number one is, while I'm saying that the first part of why they buy is their certainty that you have, the bigger issue is this. Your proposal is all about them and all about their audience, their clients, their customers, their tribe. In other words, it's all about them and what this event or whatever you're trying to do that you want them to sponsor, how it serves them. So the first mistake is too much of the proposal is all about you and about yourself and all of that. It needs to be about, in 4 years, and a great word for everybody is imagine. So imagine Johnson & Johnson. Imagine 4 years from now, we have this, this, and this, and we've achieved this, this, and this. In other words, casting the vision. So it's not doing that is one of the biggest mistakes. The second one, though, that's about proposals, that's huge, and I hope people will write this down. Never, 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 never send a proposal by mail, by FedEx, or by email. Never send a proposal before the first meeting or the first call. And once you're at the meeting, let's say you've done an initial call, they say, great, I want to do this meeting with three other executives. Do not take a proposal to that meeting. There's a couple of reasons. One, people kill themselves. They put 14 hours into a proposal, and guess what? Half of what they proposed, they don't have any interest in. So don't send a proposal after a single phone call. Don't send it in advance. And then when you do a meeting, for instance, first phone call, and you get into that, we want to talk to three executives, do not send them a proposal. And here's the language. Send us a proposal ahead of time. What I'll do is I'll send you a one sheet that gives you a big overview. But what I want to do in the meeting is I want to ask a bunch of discovery questions to learn more about what your vision is and your passion. If you do that, and that's the writer downer, they will see that you know sponsorship and that you're not just coming from some, I've never done this, I'm a newbie, I don't know what I'm doing.
So again, you're probing for questions, you're asking for clarification so you make a better proposal. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise you're writing blind from your assumption side, not from their need side again, right?
Exactly. And a great example of that is you'll pitch all this stuff about an event and it's great and all of this, and forget about COVID, but you'll present this great event and they'll say, after you've been talking, they'll go, we don't do events anymore. We just haven't found the results of that. Or you'll say, we want to do a auction and we'll have this live auction virtually and we'll raise money. And they'll say, you know what, we've hired 3 consultants and auctions don't work anymore and you don't make any money. And so all of a sudden, then you look like an idiot or you look, misinformed.
All right. So what are some of the other no's to do that are going to blow you up and hurt you with this?
I think the other one is, which I said a minute ago, but I just want to highlight, is you go in with a proposal and you're talking about a single event or you're talking about 1 year. And this doesn't matter if you're asking for $50,000 or if you're asking for $1 million. The notion is, one of the mistakes people make is they don't put a bigger vision around, this is a 3-year deal or in the next 4 years. And I mentioned it a minute ago, but I just want to share, that's one of the big mistakes. Because remember, if you hear nothing else today, what I would share is one of the biggest barriers is the person goes in their mind, they say, man, they're thinking really small. They're not really getting it. They don't get what we're trying to do. Or they're not really operating at our level. They don't see the world the way we do.
Now, has any of that changed with COVID? Because again, that's one of the questions. In the world that we know, Steven's plan looks good. In the world we have now, are there adjustments we need to do to make it maybe incrementally work that direction, or how should we do it?
I think the number one thing that I've seen and others have seen is the scarcity mindset, no matter who the person is you're dealing with, the scarcity or cultural impact of pulling back the purse strings, not sure. I mean, think about the presidential election every time. People, I'm not sure, let me wait until the election, that kind of thing. All of that is normal, right? In terms of people wanting to pull back. So here's the one distinction. I believe, and we could do a whole 2 hours on this, but here's the idea. I think what we have to be thinking about in the virtual world is you're proposing, what are you going to do before the virtual summit or the virtual presentation? What are you going to offer them? And then the other one is, what are you going to do after? And I'm just going to give you one fun, amazing one. I've seen 2 buddies of mine that are executive producers of their own live events, and they did some virtual things recently. They sent a shock and awe box, in other words, an actual cardboard box with a bunch of things that were related to the theme. But then there was a box inside the box that said, do not open until December 2nd at 12 noon. And so you then do this great surprise gift opening, and everybody's got it. So it's thinking differently about what you could deliver before the event, and then also the deliverables after the event. One quick one there is giving people, their audience, more access.
So let's talk about the access. Again, we're going to go back to the positive side in just a minute here, but
Yep.
that access it's like an a la carte or a package deal. Here's the main big deal. And off of that, we're going to have little spokes and opportunities out of that, right? You kind of backdoor this a little bit.
Well, exactly. So the notion is you tell, for instance, let's say I'm working with these 8 super heroine women that are going to launch this global women's summit. Okay. It's going to be in May of next year. The notion is you want to think about what is the impact you can make? What is the way that you can over deliver? So as an example, if you're going to have guest speakers, you raise the bar and you say, look, I know you have this $1,000 product or you have this great training or whatever. In order to participate, you have to give that away for free. No questions asked. Well, most people are now that are doing stages are realizing that that's simply a reality. We have to step it up and do that. Now, caveat, if you don't have a good back end after that product, then of course you're not going to be necessarily motivated to do that. But that's one example, is giving away more. This goes all the way back to Chris Anderson's The Free Line, right? Move the Free Line, from the book from 15 years ago. But the concept is you've got to really over deliver. The other one in terms of access is this. We're hosting 2 panel discussions with the speakers a week later and another week later. That's stuff we're not offering. That's where we're not getting creative.
Because that now gains you access behind the curtain. You're going backstage. There's backstage passes after concerts. There's green room access before the concert. So these are the things now, again, from TV media that I've been in and you've been around. You understand we can now do this virtually in a unique way, right?
Yep. So here's another one for everybody. Stop asking people whether it's a panel or individual or it's a post event. You're doing a one-on-one for everybody to get more time, with Maria Shriver, whoever it is that your celebrity that was there in your virtual summit or, co-produced your event, whatever, is simply be thinking about what is it that people don't want to hear. What they don't want to hear is about your successes. And so there's a buddy of mine, Dave Mamano, has a great book, Crash and Learn, not Crash and Burn. And it's stories of people and the biggest mistake they've made in their life. What I would say is ask people to share what is one of the biggest mistakes or failures in your life and what was the lesson you learned. That's a whole different way to humanize your guests or your speakers. And I don't see it being done a lot.
Well, and out of the church planning movement, the church ministry side, one of the best books ever that came out was Church Planning Landmines. 12 things you never wanted to know about church planning. The same concept, and it was great. So let's now pivot over to the positive side, especially on the virtual stage. I'm working with affiliate relationships. It's similar to sponsorships, but let's break down how can you monetize your webinar, your podcast, your stuff, and bring sponsors into this. First of all, is there a level of notoriety or fan base you need to have before you bring in sponsorship ideas?
The quick answer is yes. That's a metric that definitely exists, is what's your platform? How many people are we talking about? A mentor and buddy of mine, Ken MacArthur, who wrote the book Impact Factor, is brilliant. What he does is he goes out and gets buddies and friends and others and says, I'm launching this event or I'm launching this book. I'm just curious if you would be willing to support, just simply broadcast and support my event. I'm just curious how many people are on your list or how many people would see your email or see your message. And this was brilliant for his New York Times bestselling book, which is he went to the publisher and said, for this book launch, I just want to let you know that it's going to go, the promotions are going to go out for 3 weeks to 3.7 million people. His list was probably less than 200,000 people. So part of it is just like funding your new venture, and you hear about in raising capital for your company, it's the friends and family round.
Yeah.
And so they give you the first 100 grand or whatever. It's the same model. Go get your buddies, your friends to commit that they'll send it out. Here's the other challenge though, and this is just a harsh reality, and I want everybody to know this because I've got the scars to prove this, and it's a painful lesson to learn. Most affiliates will not actually mail for you. They'll say they will, but they won't. So here's the secret. How do you mitigate that problem? You have to get way ahead and be 8 months out. In other words, don't be asking people really close in, and here's why. Anybody that has a great list, they're already doing things. And in fact, many people, they already have their, believe it or not, they've already got their 2021 mapped out, calendarized for every affiliate event, every promotion, everything they're doing. Believe it or not, most people, that's the secret. So you need to understand that when you go to approach these people. So one is lead time. So for instance, I said these superheroine women are going to do this Women's Global Leadership Summit in May of next year. Well, that's 6 months. Now is when you want to be talking about sponsors, because what we're going to do for that group is we're going to go raise $500,000 to $1 million to offset the cost of putting on that summit. So lead time is one of the big issues.
Now, when you talk about lead time, again, from the sports marketing I come out of, yeah, we built our program sponsors, we built our banner program for the outfield. We did all that 6-8 months in advance. That was the all off season before the game ever came up.
Yep.
When we do this now virtually, what are like the billboards? What are the things we can do to say you're going to get the sponsorship seen here? What are the ways that we can jazz it up like the sporting events people do, like Disney does?
Yep. So I wanted to just share within the chat. In the chat, there's a neat resource for everybody. It's a great question. You didn't know I was going to share this, but there's a gentleman, Chris Bayless, and he has a site called Sponsorship Collective, sponsorshipcollective.com. And the reason I bring it up in terms of your question is this. He has this incredible free resource site. He's so abundance-minded and generous. He actually has a great article about 18 different things that you could be doing and offering sponsors in the virtual world.
That's gold. That's gold right there.
It's priceless. So I encourage anybody to go to sponsorshipcollective.com. I discovered it recently from a friend that said, hey, you got to check this out. It's Chris Bayless. He's absolutely incredible. I just recently got on his list. He gives away so much free stuff, templates and everything. It will blow your mind. And I would just say he's one of the most generous people I've discovered in the corporate sponsorship space. So anybody that's just wanting to get started, definitely go there. I have no affiliation. I have nothing financial gains from that. I'm just celebrating just myself as a consumer. I think he's amazing.
And these are the type of resources that we want to mention on this show. That's exactly the type of stuff we want to bring to help elevate everyone's game. So when it comes to sponsorships, I'm used to the radio of you drop your commercials at certain time and so on a webinar, on a podcast, do you do an intro sponsor, a mid-show sponsor, an end-show sponsor? What are some of the best tips and tricks to give them the value they want and also get the best bang for your buck with that relationship as well?
Great. One of the examples that is a perfect virtual summit method that most people are missing is to let the sponsor shoot a 30-second to 1 minute video that's their own version of a promo video, and then play that in the middle of your event. It's a missed opportunity for most people to think about that level of exposure for the sponsor. That's one example of that, how to really leverage that.
But also, Steve, when you think about that, one of the things I'm coaching people is we're not competing with TV. We've been trained every 7 minutes there's a commercial, there's a break. That's also adding an element of that same TV type thing. So if you sprinkle several of those in, you're creating that TV break, reset your mind, come back with the next thing. So that's actually very entertainment driven.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The other thing is that a couple folks in this mastermind group that I host, there's a complimentary mastermind on Fridays, and it has speakers and consultants. And one of the things, we've got a couple people that are Second City improv trained, and they're improv, they've done improv on stage for many, many years. And here's one really exciting opportunity would be add more physical movement to your experience. So Rochelle Rice is amazing. She's an expert on building more movement into your meetings and things like that. But then the other is the entertainment side. So what I would do, and I've seen this twice now, is you showcase some form of entertainment sponsored by the sponsor. So now you're helping that entertainment person, that improv person or whoever it is, they're getting exposure. They're also getting introduced to the company. And now it's benevolent for them as they might actually get hired again by the sponsor. But that's one thing I would say, and I know you're really passionate about this, Rich. We have got to get out of the box in terms of what we're doing in these long full day sessions.
Yeah, they don't work. No one's going to stay for 3, 4, 5 hours. But if you do creative short blasts, they'll keep coming back for more.
Yep. There's another one, Sylvia Henderson. She's a master at internal masterminds for companies. And she just recently posted an article. I think it's sylviahenderson.com, but she just posted an article of some creative ways for participant-centered, experiential best practices. So that's another great resource is Sylvia Henderson's this article. It's a really good one.
Going back to your advanced box, and I've recently learned about this, began coaching on this as well. The box before the event is one of the biggest new tricks I have learned. It breaks the glass. It involves them virtually. It's tactile. But if you have a sponsor, here's the other thing. Get some goodies from the sponsor and put it into your advanced box. What an amazing door prize, right?
Absolutely. And that whole notion is now a given in these monthly subscription retail programs, Butcher Box or any of these that you get, monthly delivery. The secret of that is, yes, people will give that stuff to you for free. You fill the box. And so that's a surprise. So what you just brought up is that's another big OMG thing of how do you get multiple sponsors to participate. So you have somebody that says, I can only give you in-kind donations. Great. We're sending out 400 of these boxes. Great. I'll send you 2 of our products. So that's a great example, but it also opens up multiple sponsors. So I agree with you. The box is amazing. Yeah.
So now let's translate this into the revenue side. You start getting the sponsorships, you start getting people involved, you get the little prizes. Let's talk about how you say now this is worth X amount of money to get it on my show, on my podcast. How do you leverage that? And because pricing the virtual world is something new. A lot of people are trying to figure out what's the value for this. How do we do that? Where do we start, Steven?
That's a great one too that I discovered on Sponsorship Collective. He has another great article and post about how to think about the pricing components. And he even has like a video training to think about it because there's a lot of moving parts to that, right? Yeah. What I would say is what you want to think about is very quickly is think about radio and TV commercials. The idea would be this. Think about the number of impressions. In other words, how many times will your audience get to be exposed to the sponsor? So for instance, their logo's on your PowerPoint slides the entire time that you're on screen. That's one example. But think about it in terms of number of impressions. And then also think about it in terms of how many people will be exposed. So your minimum is 800 people are going to be in your audience. So you start putting these numbers together. It's going to be 800 people. They're going to get exposed 4 times during my 4-hour virtual event. And you start thinking about those numbers, those frequencies, right? Then from that, what you also want to think about is, and this is a big one, and I just want to share this with everybody. Typical CEO in America, their monthly mortgage is $12,000. I saw another study was like 10,700. So what I want you to think about is you are not your customer. You are not your sponsor. You're not your client. This is massive. Stop thinking about what you think you deserve or what you're used to charging and all that stuff. Stop. What you want to think about is who are they that I'm talking to? Is it $1 million company? Is it a $50 million company? So how big are they? What's the size? The other thing is, what is it that they're going to get from the exposure? So you want to think about that. So the quick answer, that's a quick answer, but definitely go to that Sponsorship Collective. I think there's a great resource there.
And we will put that in the enhanced version of the playback, everybody. So you make sure you will get that and connect with that. It sounds like a great resource. Yep. And again, that's a mental change, Steven, you're talking about now, about your money set, your place and status in life versus theirs. For a brief second, how do you learn and study that and understand their mindset? Because that's a quantum leap for many people of, I'm just used to me being me, but they're not you. Give us some quick tips on
Okay.
how to get there.
Here's something that a mentor taught me, and it's brilliant. In your own local market, you have symphonies, you have museums, you have zoos. In other words, you have all these fine arts, beautiful buildings and things in your city, correct? Many people in larger cities have that, right? Here's what I would share with you. Go to those facilities, find the bronze, big, huge plaque that's attached to the wall, take a digital picture of it, and then go home and look at all the names of who those people are that were major donors. Okay. Some it'll be a trust, a foundation, but they also see individual names. Then go to the website of that organization and see who is on the board of directors. This, what I'm about to say, is going to change your life if you're new to this whole world. You take a look at the people that were the massive donors, and you don't have to go the big, huge ones. Just find some people that are on that bronze plaque and look at the board of directors. And here's what you do. You simply contact these people through InMail or through email or just cold call them. But here's the idea. Gee golly gosh shucks. Hi, Rich. Gee golly gosh shucks. I was just curious. I see that you're a CEO of XYZ company, and I see that you're on the board of Boys Club and Girls Club here in Philadelphia. So you're linking that he has a heart for kids and mentorship. So that's part of it. And that aligns with your mission and what you're wanting to do. Here's the secret. You're not asking for sponsorship from that person. What you're doing, and this is what most people, Rich, aren't willing to do. Find 20 of these people and you call them and you say, I was just curious, based on your success, and I see you're a member of the board of the Opera House downtown. I was just curious if you'd have 5 minutes to share with me your thoughts, because I'm wanting to launch an event and get sponsors, and I'm also linking it to a nonprofit, and I'd love your insights on that. The word I want you to write down is, I would be honored to hear your expert input. Or, I'd love to, do you have 5 minutes to share your expert opinion on the notion? The other one is, I'm just curious, I see you're on the board. I'm looking to start a virtual event. I was just curious, if you were starting over yourself, what's something that you would teach? The issue is, Rich, those people are the ones that'll change your life.
Right. And again, they get to shine, they get to toot their horn a little bit, they get to brag on themselves. But what they'll also do is give you something you cannot get any other way.
Yep.
What is, when it comes to sponsorships from virtual to physical, what are the biggest things to learn? Is it seamless, the same techniques, or is this virtual world giving us different things we need to learn better on the virtual stage? Do we have to change some of these techniques, or is it just seamless transition?
I would say 70 to 80% of it crosses over, no problem. But one example is using Zoom breakout rooms on a virtual event, like you would have an expo hall or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and then offering to your virtual attendees that these rooms will be open. That's something that people aren't thinking about in the virtual world. The concept is you can have people pay for that, just like they get a booth. They pay for that breakout room exposure. The other thing is this: don't think that you have to have that exactly during your event. Let's say you're only doing a 90-minute webinar, but you want to add value because of who you're sharing your message with. Just want to let you know, for the next hour after this webinar is over, or a buddy of mine just called it a Zoominar the other day, which was a great term. So for my Zoominar, just want to let you know that for the hour afterwards, these 6 experts are going to be in these breakout rooms.
And then those are sponsored breakout rooms.
Exactly.
So XYZ company has this one, and if you're interested, a la carte, go over here, and they'll be there. I'm relating that kind of to the Comic-Cons and the panelists, that you get the main speaker, but they'll have that exclusive secondary club you get to go to a little bit deeper, more private conversation.
Yep.
It's the same model, but just do it virtually.
Yep. And there's a great software out there, Remo, and it's a relatively new platform. I'm not an expert on it, but you actually can virtually walk right up to a table. You can see who's at the table on the screen and walk right up to the table. So that's another neat way to do it, is use that platform. That brings up a great point, which is most of these virtual summit and virtual event folks that I've been talking to, they're using multiple softwares and multiple platforms to put on their events. It's fascinating.
Right. And yeah, there's a lot of companies that I've been working with, and you're probably bumping into them as well. They actually look like an expo center now. They're creating a vibe and a touch, and that's where the stage is expanding. This is not just a Zoom box. It's not going to be the Zoom box very much longer. These platforms are become real experiential environments. And again, going back to Disney, they created the whole experience. And people are going to use that to say, how can we make this more 360 in vibe and experience? And there is actually a virtual environment where you become an avatar now. And you're actually going to present and speak on an avatar with an avatar crowd. It's only just beginning, isn't it, Steven? Isn't this just kind of the beginning of it all?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, this isn't going anywhere. This is going, like you said at the beginning, there's going to be a hybrid version of this, bricks and mortar and online and virtual. It's not going anywhere. So it's really about being creative and figuring out ways to create experiences that are different than the typical Zoom meeting.
There's a couple conversations I've had recently about sponsorships. Do you just get anybody you want, or do you stay with your niche and you stay within what you are to have sponsors only align with you? Like TV broadcasts, I'll take anybody.
Right.
But this is not true TV broadcast.
This is a great question. This is a phenomenal question, because this is an issue that's a make or break deal. What you want to do is you want to look at sponsors who have the same audience. They call it in the business of sponsors, they call it an audience parallel. What they want to know is, and I just gave you an example where you were talking to this one person that was a big board of directors person at Boys Club and Girls Club. Well, if I was doing something for grandmas suffering dementia, that's a large stretch between working with kids and mentoring and working with grandmas, right? So, but believe it or not, Rich, a lot of people do that. And so it's like, stop. So what you want to do is think about who is their audience, who are they working with? And then the other thing is, with the blessing of websites and YouTube, I'll use Dove Soap as an example. Think about the great TV commercial that Dove Soap did, where they had the women of all shapes and sizes in underwear and bras and panties, right? And it was about what? Women empowerment. So in other words, be open to the idea. What have you seen on TV? Who, so on. A great example, real quick, was Dr. Mike Thompson has a nonprofit, National Civility Association, and they do high school civility summits. It's an amazing thing. They basically restoring character and civility in our society, and they're working with high school, teens, right? The concept is, who is it that you would go to that cares about kindness, character, civility, but also has a heart for high school students?
Now, let me flip the table and go from our side of wanting sponsors to the people out there, the entities, the corporations, the 500s.
Yep.
Are they even thinking of the virtual stage as a viable sponsorship platform, or is that a new, slow up-and-coming thing that just now being their wonder, can I do something on this stage? Where is their mindset, do you think, Steven?
Based on my experience, so for instance, on Fridays, we do this complimentary mastermind, strategicspeakersecrets.com. But the concept is, in that arena, in that community we have of all these different speakers and consultants, what they're telling me, and I'm just going to give you names of companies. So Wells Fargo, American Express, Cisco, Google, HP, Walmart. What's interesting is we have people in our community that have worked with those companies. And here's the quick answer. It's slowly building momentum. As this goes longer, this COVID thing goes longer into next July or whatever, those companies are going to start seeing the harsh reality that it's just a must, and they're going to have to make the shift. However, there are, in terms of some of those companies I just listed, there are some that are massively on board innovation and all that. What I would do that's interesting is go to Google, put in a company name that you want to do as a target, and then put in like American Express virtual as the Google search. American Express Summit, American Express, whatever, right? The concept is just use Google to tell you if these companies are already doing a bunch of things, as an example.
No, that's a great idea because, again, more and more are going to have to get on board with this. This is going to continue on. I can remember when YouTube first was just YouTube, and then you began to get sponsors popping up on YouTube. Now you have commercials before your YouTube clip. With the virtual stage, we're going to run into the very same thing. It's just some of those early adopters are going to pave the way, aren't they?
Absolutely. And there's an amazing thing to look at, beaherostudios.com, beaherostudios.com. It's Nate Woodbury. He is absolutely one of the greatest YouTube experts on the planet. And he actually runs for people. He has 11 different channels that he's running for people and producing their shows. You want to delve into this issue of what's going on in YouTube, just check out Nate Woodbury. He's got like a free video. He's got the pulse of exactly what you're talking about, is what's going on in YouTube as it relates to companies and sponsorship and what they're doing. There are people that are leveraging YouTube now, not only that advertising revenue and all that, but leveraging the YouTube videos to then prompt you to go to Eventbrite, for instance, and schedule your event. So there's some fascinating things going on.
So sponsorship is alive and well. It's growing on the virtual stage. Any other great nuggets of wisdom, either avoid this or do this, that we need to make sure we get in here today?
I would say, based on my life experience, at the age of 19, I called Sam Walton of Walmart, and he talked to me for an hour and a half. And then I hung up the phone and I called Fred Smith at FedEx, and he talked to me for an hour, hour and a half. What's interesting is my bias from doing that. I've done over 1,200 of those phone calls. I was just curious if Sam would be willing to share the secret to his success. That question taps into all kinds of subconscious stuff. Here's the point. I gave you earlier in this call a way to do that question.
Yeah.
Gee golly gosh shucks, I was just curious, right? So that would be one big takeaway is do whatever you have to do to get outside of yourself. Let go of all the hang-ups. Stop taking yourself so seriously, right? I mean, and the other thing is just make it fun. But here's the deal. In all the calls I made, and I've told others, and I've taught college entrepreneurship program students 200 at a time at Temple and other places, the concept is this, and you can take this to the bank. When your life changes is this. You do one of those interviews and you say this. Thank you so much. You've been so generous with your time and your sharing. I was just curious, is there somebody else that you think would be just as generous as you have been to talk with me? That is when your life changes, because now when you call the second person, it goes like this. Michael Eisner referred me to Roy Disney when I was on the college program. When Roy Disney answers the phone, first got his executive assistant, then I get Roy. He was expecting the call. He had gotten the note from Michael Eisner, the CEO of Disney, and here's what he does. He hops on the phone and says, "Oh, hey, Steven, any friend of Michael's is a friend of mine." It's the halo effect.
Yes.
What I want to share with you is, between all the people I've taught that concept to, 17 times that I know of, $50,000 to $1 million was invested in the person's company from an angel investor. And all 17 times, it was the second phone call that was referred by the first phone call. The halo effect is so massive. Any friend of Michael's is a friend of mine. So I would say that's a massive, that's been with me since 19 years of age.
So is that also the idea of there's a gatekeeper sometime? Find out who the gatekeeper is. The old trick that I learned years ago in broadcasting, if you want to get to somebody, get to know their secretary. Treat the secretary really well, and she will pave the way to get you to the back door. Is it still kind of the same way that you find who those gatekeepers are and build up and get
Sure,
to Michael Eisner?
Exactly. So here's a great one. Here's the idea. Hi, Sally, thank you so much for taking the call. I can only imagine, right? Or I imagine that since you're the CEO, the executive assistant of the CEO, I can imagine that you're the one that actually runs the company. They will chuckle every time, but it's also true.
Yes.
They're the single most powerful person in the entire corporation. Whether you get passed on or not is all in her hands. So what you do is you go, hi, Nancy, as the executive assistant, and use LinkedIn, see that she's been there 15 years. You go, Nancy, I've noticed you're the executive assistant for 15 years for so-and-so. I was just curious. I'm working on this, right? Working on a nonprofit or an event. I was just curious, since you lead such a large company, I'm curious what your insights, your expert opinion would be on blank. Or I noticed that you all sponsor United Way and you've done that for 30 years. I'm working on identifying sponsors. That's not why I'm calling. Like if this is a voicemail you're leaving, but I'm just curious because you've done, so back up. I'm excited to see, Nancy, that for 30 years, you all have sponsored United Way. I'm just curious as the person that runs the company, right? I'm just curious if you would be willing to take 5 minutes and just share with me some insights about working with nonprofits. In other words, you treat the executive assistant as if she is a CEO.
Oh yes, yeah. You treat her like a queen, and the more you get that, I've found personally,
Yep.
you do get doors opened up.
Yep.
One other thought about sponsorships, and then I want to hear more. Let you brag on yourself a little bit about what you do and the expert that you are. But when it comes to sponsorships, do you go for a year-long commitment? Do you go for a half year, a quarter? What's the best way to get the sponsorship engine rolling with a new deal?
Perfect. The language I've always used is I'd love to do a pilot. So thank you so much for your interest. You're saying this to the sponsor. Thank you so much for your interest. I appreciate you being willing to discuss this let me do this presentation with your team. And thank you for your time. The concept then being, I understand that I gave you, and this typically will come from them in the conversation. They'll say, wow, you just gave us this huge vision. Let's table that for 2022. What could we do in 2021? In corporate world, they're saying, what's a pilot that we could do? So with a sponsor, because typically it's corporate or they're corporate people that are involved, what you do, corporate experience people, is you say, sounds like it would be really great to do a good faith, goodwill pilot. Or sounds like, I really appreciate your interest. I love that idea because it does take time to ramp up, 2022. What if we did a good faith pilot? Now you're speaking to relationship first,
right,
and partnership rather than talking to the business aspect of it.
And that might be one of the great little caveats to add into all this conversation of when you get sponsorships, you're talking dollars, revenue, packaging, promotion. Do not miss the relationship side or you will not get any of that. Especially in the new world we live in, Stephen, I think it's even more important. You have to do relationship first or you're not going to get to the finish line. Do you agree?
Yes, absolutely. The great story that I learned many years ago, and let's do this very quickly, is a young man was just out of college and he was going to apply for a job, for his first job at a corporation. He gets out of the car in the parking garage and he sees this woman 2 cars over that's getting out of her car and walking into the building. Well, he goes to the elevator in the parking garage and he sees her coming, but decides to go ahead and close the elevator. He then shows up with his resume, shows up at the place to do the interview. The woman walks into the same office and says, hi, are you here to see George Smith? Yes, ma'am, I am. She was the executive assistant to George Smith. He blew it.
Yeah.
Magically, George Smith wasn't available, and unfortunately, we're going to need to reschedule your appointment. When I learned that from a mentor, when he told me that story, I was like, okay, that's a parable that will stick with me forever.
Yeah. Stephen, thank you for all the sponsorship talk information. Again, now tell us a bit about what you do. You are a consultant and speaker. And again, you have worked with from Disney to major corporations, from UPS. Give us a little understanding about who you are and why you have this place and this understanding.
Sure. So for 25 years, after leaving Disney, I basically dedicated my life to doing change management consulting. I figured out during that journey with a corporate partner, I figured out how to take my patient satisfaction improvement system. I was working with hospitals, lots of hospitals, and I learned how to get that licensed with that corporate partner into these hospitals. And we did it 1,100 times. And I went, wow, this is an amazing way to leverage your content, your expertise, instead of always having to go out and do a speech and so on. So I was always a change management consultant who happens to love speaking. Then I would offer these different solutions, like the licensing idea. So what I did when COVID hit was I went to my business partner, Emerson Brantley, who's a master copywriter, and he and I said, why don't we give back to the community and support speakers and consultants who are bound to have lost 70 and 80% of their speaking gigs? And so what we did is we created strategicspeakersecrets.com, and it's in the chat, strategicspeakersecrets.com. And what we did is it's basically an invitation for people to come on a Friday at 12 noon Eastern time for 1 hour and get into breakout rooms, into hot seats, share your business challenge with a facilitator and with others, and then get feedback. The issue is this: I'd love for people to go to the site and I'd love for people to register. The other opportunity is we have a completely no selling, no sales call, strategy call, and it's strategicspeakersecrets.com/call. It's in the chat. But here's the idea. We have personally curated the entire community. Now almost a third of the entire community are people that were invited by other members. So we're not doing Facebook ads. We're not spamming people. That's not how we're building this community. So this is the first time I've actually broadcast the site and this concept, honestly, to the world, is go to the site, register. I'll take a look at your profile. I'll look at your website and everything. And if we believe you're a good fit, then we'd love to have you on Fridays.
And we will make sure, again, on the post-production of this, we will add that right on the screen for everyone to be able to go find it. And again, you are doing relationship first. You are vetting, but for good reason, because you want it to be focused, target. You don't want to do wide and no depth and no meat. You're really trying to say, here's what we are going to do. This is about speakers and that slice more of, but you also want to make it to the quality that you want, right?
Yep. And this global women's summit it came out of this community. There's these 8 incredible superpower women, these heroines, and they came together. They were all a part of the community. And I saw that they all had complementary expertise. And we're going to launch next May a global summit. That would have never happened if they hadn't been a part of that community.
What is your biggest takeaway with the virtual stage right now? What is your biggest, it's exploding, it's growing rapidly, but what does Steven Rowell really think about the virtual stage right now?
I think it's great. I think it's something we have to pivot to and adapt. What I would say, in my way of answering that question, I could answer it several different ways, but one way I would answer it is put on a Batman mask, wear a crazy hat. We all know that a third of the people are sitting there in their underwear with a shirt on top, right? I mean, it's crazy. Walmart announced back 3 months into COVID, Walmart announced that they had a massive 28% increase in women's blouse sales. True story. Just shirts, just blouses, right? Massive explosion because of that whole joke of, oh, well, we're all just in shorts and underwear, on virtual calls. But anyway, what I would say is this. Stop being the hardcore serious person and just lighten up and show up, because I believe, and I want my wife, who's a documentary filmmaker, to do this documentary. I believe there's a pandemic in our country, but also in the world, of loneliness. And so while we're most connected electronically, digitally than we've ever been before, I believe we're actually the most disconnected as a species, as a culture, as a country, as a community, as a town, as a village, and a home. And a dear friend of mine said the other day, Steven, we're lonely inside a house or in an office with other people. So what I would say is bring your heart and your spirit of the loneliness pandemic and put relationship first and show up and lead with your heart and be real. The other thing is focus on sharing your mistakes, not your successes.
And again, have fun, because again, this is now TV. This is now entertainment. This is now the joy box. This is now something that it should not just be business only. You have to have fun doing it. Steven, thank you. That's a great way to land the plane here. And speaking about that loneliness factor, tomorrow we're doing another daytime special. Allison Graham, she'll be joining me live 1 p.m. Eastern time. Get your tickets at Eventbrite. But Allison Graham is about joy and resilience. Again, not a better topic. What Steven was just saying, she's going to take the whole time and talk about this and coach us up of how we can virtually do this resilience. But a great way to pick up the conversation. Next Wednesday night, we're back at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. We're going to go back to the nighttime, our regular time slot, and we are going to have Eli Marcus with us. He is a connector to the stars. Everything that Steven just said about sponsorship, now you want to figure out who the right stars are. So you raise your rankings, raise your popularity. Eli is going to talk about how to make a great Rolodex, great connectivity, using LinkedIn and other things to rise your Rolodex yourself. You don't want to miss that. Remember, every week, How to Rock the Virtual Stage. We're always live. We're always interactive. And again, if you want to connect with me, rich@richbontrager.net. And keep looking for more things. We have affiliates coming this year in 2021. We have sponsorships coming this year in 2021. And any way we can serve you and help you, please reach out. Also, we'll have Steven's information on the screen here at the end. Make sure you reach out with Steven or check out that new group on Fridays with the Mastermind Group. Steven Rowell, thanks for joining me. It's been a great having you. Have yourself a great rocking day.